Thanks for joining us for the KOHO 101 Community Connection Podcast, a look at business in the greater Wenatchee area.
It's the KOHO Morning Show, Hour 4, underway on this Friday, the 16th of July. Time now for another installment of our Community Connections podcast series with the Wenatchee Valley Chamber of Commerce. Going to be chatting today with Shiloh Burgess, their executive director, along with another member of the chamber from their Advocacy Committee. Joe Holeman is with us today. Joe's also part of Holeman Law Group here in the Wenatchee Valley. Going to find out more specifically about the Advocacy Committee and about advocacy in general here in the Valley as it relates to businesses, commerce, etc. And Shiloh, Joe, I appreciate the time very much. Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
So, Shiloh, a good place for us to start would be from you before we swing to Joe, I guess, to kind of give us an overview of the Advocacy Committee, since this is a part of what you do at the chamber.
Yeah, it's a robust part now of what we do at the chamber. It started about 5 years ago, and one of the reasons I'm excited for KOHO listeners to hear from Joe is he was part of that founding group of members that helped us set up the committee and evolve their work. The chamber employs a lobbyist by the name of Bruce Beckett in Olympia, and we've done that for 5 years now. And really our goal is to be a trusted advocate for the business community to government, as well as a credible resource to them, and more so to our businesses or our members as we're going through important issues that might impact our community, our quality of life, how they can or cannot run their business. And so we just want to be that voice for them in those spaces. And to do that effectively, you need great members like Joe who are willing to donate their time and their expertise and their, just background to those conversations, because we cover a lot of different areas in this community that are important to us. And so we need that flavor sitting around that table. So I'm excited that Joe is here to maybe talk to us a little bit about, well, why did he decide to do that so many years ago and stick with it? Because he has, and now he's a leader with us.
Well, it's a fair enough place for us to start, Joe. So why did you decide to hop on board with the Advocacy Committee?
My goal was to come in and give back to the community. And my wife and I grew up here in the Wenatchee Valley. And then I went to law school over on the Seattle-Tacoma area and had a practice over there for about 20 years or so. And when we came back over to Wenatchee about 5 years ago, one of my goals was just to get out and give back to the community. And one of the things that really struck me was the difference between what happens on the I-5 corridor versus over here in the Wenatchee Valley. And so I think with my background as an attorney and the interest that I had to try and promote the business community here, Shiloh approached me with this idea that the chamber needed an advocacy committee to help identify some of the key issues that were going on in our community that we needed to be concerned about as a chamber and as a member of this community in our valley. And so I don't know if it was a good thing or not, but I made the decision to donate my time to the chamber, and I haven't looked back. It's just been a very exciting time. Shiloh is an awesome person in leading the chamber. She's developed an excellent team with the chamber, and working with that group there has just been nonstop fun, exciting, and to see the changes that have happened has really been important to me. As an example, through my prior life as a business development director, as well as an attorney, I did go out and participate in other chambers throughout the state of Washington, some big ones and some small ones. And there's a difference of night and day in terms of what the Wenatchee has done with its chamber, and in comparison to other chambers in the state. Is a classic example. One of the first things that we were able to accomplish here through the work at the chamber was to get money from the legislature to help our valley, our future. And then because we're on the east side, having our lobbyist on board, working over in Olympia with Shiloh and her team, I've seen numerous benefits from that. And so it's really been encouraging to be a part from the start to the current date, and to continue to give back to the community through the chamber.
Yeah, very good. Shiloh, how many folks on the Advocacy Committee locally?
We currently have 11, and that's a great segue. If there are businesses or business owners out there or business professionals that are part of the chamber that are interested in learning more about this committee, we would love to talk to them. Typically, we do those appointments in May, which is a couple months ago, but because of the nature of COVID and everything that has kind of been happening, we didn't do full-on press. We kind of just held tight with the group and said, let's keep going, but we're definitely interested in talking to folks that might want to be part of this team. It is a time commitment. These groups this group in particular works really hard. They have monthly meetings in session. They have weekly meetings. And then right now they're in the season of refining our policy and guiding principle documents, which usually breaks into subcommittees. So this is a working group that's really dedicated to trying to shape the policy initiatives that the chamber gets behind, and then to help guide us through that, either at the local level when we're interacting with our local government partners, or at the state or federal level when we're being asked to weigh in, or we think we need to weigh in on particular issues. So if you're out there and this interests you, one of the things that I hear is, I don't really know anything about that. Like, I don't know about the process. And I said, but do you know about your area of business? Well, yeah. Well, then we need that voice. I can help. Bruce can help. Other people on the committee can help. How does this fit in the process? But we need your expertise. We need to know how this law might affect your industry, or how this might affect your business, because then we can take that real life, true story and hopefully utilize that to shape how that law is going to get crafted, or maybe even put that bill down.
Yeah.
Just in response to that, Shiloh, from my own standpoint, I don't really see it as a real time commitment either. I mean, it's granted you do have the monthly meetings and there's some additional work throughout the year, but it is something that, as a business person, that it's the right thing to do, to get out there and help out. And we have 11 people on the committee right now, and the more people that we have on that committee that can provide input and kind of share the wealth, many hands create less work type proverb, I think that's important. But the fact that we do so much overall, from the 2 or 3 years that I've been on the committee, I look back on it and it's not really that big of a time commitment, and no big picture of things. And it is something that's very rewarding for me individually and for my business. And it's just something that I would strongly encourage other businesses in the community to seriously look at. Do you have somebody at your company that would be willing to come in and help the chamber, to help the community, to help all of us within the valley? And that's where it's the right thing to do. So people, we need your help.
Joe Holeman with us today. He is with the Holeman Law Group and also part of the Wenatchee Valley Chamber of Commerce's Advocacy Committee. He's their vice chair. We also have Shiloh Burgess in-house with us today for the chamber, and she's their executive director, of course. This, again, part of our Community Connections podcast series with the chamber, talking about leadership in a lot of different ways here, and also about community, certainly as far as development is concerned. So, Joe, related to advocacy, just in general, it's a word that seems to be bandied about just a little bit, and I suppose it could mean different things in different applications. But what are one of the biggest things, or what are some of the biggest things that you have advocated for related to some of these policies that are coming out of Olympia these days? I mean, obviously, each sector could be impacted by small pieces of legislation that are passed here and there, but in a general or sweeping term, is there anything that's happened in the last 5-10 years since you've been a part of this that has affected a lot of businesses that you've been helped to advocate for? Well,
I guess the most relevant example here in our community is what's been going on with labor in the agricultural community. We had, over the last few years, a lot of issues in labor, hourly employees in the tree fruit industry, or for all of agriculture. And then most recently, some decisions coming down from the appellate courts that deal with overtime for labor in the agricultural community. And that's one of the issues that we started off when the Advocacy Committee was first formed. That's one of the key things that we need to look at, and how labor affects our community. And we're a little bit different than labor on the I-5 corridor. And so having that experienced voice in there through the chamber, as well as our lobbyist, to represent us over in Olympia on those key issues is very important key. Another example that's coming up in the legislature and has been over the last few years is the carbon tax. That not only will affect the agriculture community, but also the PUDs. And so having the chamber with its 600 plus members, talking to the community, sending out the monkey surveys on how those issues would affect the community, developing a policy for the chamber, the board of the chamber to represent, and giving it to our lobbyist, and going over to Olympia and being a very strong voice in Olympia on those key issues is huge in terms of impacting the economy here, the businesses here. And I didn't even touch on the big one with COVID, but we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's just sort of a small piece, obviously.
A very small piece.
Shiloh, I would guess that that's something that we should obviously talk about. I mean, no better time to have a committee like this in place than during a global pandemic, one that's affected business here in Washington State, elsewhere in the nation, even around the world so tremendously. So to have this in place again had to have been huge during the pandemic, thus far at least.
I give a lot of kudos to the board of directors who heard my wild and crazy idea at the time of hiring a lobbyist and putting together an advocacy committee. At that time, it was a budget stretch for us to do that, and not really knowing what would come of that kind of investment initially. Building the team, building the processes, building the relationships. We have tremendous relationships at the state level, whether that's within the governor's office or with legislators, which is important for a community our size, but also with other state associations, the Association of Washington Business, the Washington Retail Association, the Washington Hospitality Association, the Washington Tree Fruit Association. I mean, we are connected to all of those associations, National Federation of Independent Businesses, because they produce a lot of great work, and we can lean on them, and we can also at times take things that are important and really be the issue expert for them to then put in rooms that help put that point across. But 5 years ago, we started that. And yes, the culmination of all of that work, we were in rooms and having conversations and being consulted and being influencers in spaces that many chambers were not, because of this idea that we want to be a trusted advocate and a credible resource, not only to our businesses and our community and our local governments, but everywhere we go. And we stepped up. And it's been an incredible year, but it's also created conflict. And how do you navigate that conflict? And to have the advocacy committee and have that space to vet it from a whole community standpoint, couldn't have done it without that. And so really, you never know, for such a moment as this, you lay that foundation and then you go, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we can stand on this, because it's the time to rise. And so it's been a journey, but a big thank you to all the team, whether it's the staff members that have worked on this from us, to the volunteers that have been part of it, to our lobbyists. We were able to influence things. And Joe is right, labor's huge. Not only labor in terms of how that works on a day-to-day basis, but now it's, getting people back to work now that they're being required to search for jobs. And how does that work? And what does that mean? And, how do we get the workforce back? And what does that workforce need? And what do those employers need? I mean, we say it a lot, but we need a predictable regulatory environment, right? We need the ability to generate cash at a way that allows us to be sustainable and hopefully grow. And those three principles, we said that over and over again in trying to guide COVID policy. And so it's taught us a lot. I'm sure it'll influence how we advocate in the future, but it definitely helped us feel like we were of value for our members and for the region because of this entity and program being available through the chamber.
Yeah.
The work's not done on that either. I think right now, with the economy hopefully opening up here in the next 2 weeks, what we're seeing in the hospitality industry here in the Valley, the COVID's still having an impact on that. There's a ton of employers out there that are still searching for people to come in and work, and the doors are going to be open here in 2 weeks, and they don't have the staff for it. And that's where the advocacy committee can help out on that. And we've tried very hard to help out on that and be prepared for it. But overall, though, Chris, listening to Shiloh, what business out there wouldn't want to be working with her? Where do you get the energy?
Passion. This place, it's got to be the sunshine and the fresh air and the people of this place. No, I've been very fortunate having the experiences that I've had in Olympia, and to then take that knowledge and apply it for this community in a different way, and specifically for the business community. They're my heroes. To be a business owner, to take that risk. I mean, thinking about coming through COVID and, not only trying to make something happen so that you can support yourself, but then taking on the responsibility of supporting all of those additional families that are part of your organization, and having to navigate. You have to love change, or you have to be adaptable anyways. And they've proven that over and over again. And some really great things have come out of this experience for many businesses, and they'll never go back, which is awesome. But it's a unique group of people that are willing to do this every day. And I say that they inspire me. They are incredible heroes in my book, that they're willing to do this and provide jobs and provide quality of life for so many in this valley. And sometimes I think they're going to be like unicorns or Sasquatches running around in these hills, depending on what happens. So
we have those too, by the way, just in case people were wondering. So they're not oft seen, but they are out there for sure. So it's got to be great to have a lawyer, I suppose, as part of the advocacy committee as well. I mean, that never hurts.
No, it never hurts. And, part of it is just how you guys think, Joe. I mean, it's very logical, systematic at times. Let's define the problem and then what are the things that are influencing the problem. But more so, it's communication. A lot of times lawyers take very complex issues and things that a lot of people don't understand because it's a very niche, I think, kind of industry with a lot of complexities to it. But then, as you've seen with Joe today, I can communicate it out simply. And that's really important when you're advocating on issues that are complex and touch a lot of different things or a lot of different parts of our communities. And so it's been a great value for us to have someone like Joe on the advocacy. We've had a couple attorneys connected to us.
We have, and that's where I've learned a lot too. Jess Monet is still on the advocacy committee. And then we had Bob Sidarius from JDSA as the president and member of the chamber. And I know they follow in the footsteps of a lot of other attorneys that have been on board here. And so, yeah, it's a fun group. And it's been very rewarding. And we do work as a team and have the relationships developed where we can communicate and work as a team from all forms of different businesses, not just as an attorney, but in real estate, in agriculture, in healthcare. There's 11 different people on that committee that give different viewpoints and different ideas on how to solve some of the problems that we're facing here in our community. And so the teamwork on there is very special.
Well, we've appreciated learning more about it today. Joe, Shiloh, again, thanks for your time. Is there anything else, Shiloh, you think that we should cover with Joe before we wrap up here?
I would just invite your KOHO listeners, if we have piqued your interest on this committee and on the work that the Chamber does through advocacy, one, go to our website, wenatchee.org. We have under one of the drop-down menus, the Advocacy Committee tab, where they can learn about the members, where they can learn about our guiding principles and our policy issues. We put out Voters Guide, so that's going to be coming here in the next 2 weeks. People will get our voter guide for the school board races that are going. That'll also be published in English and Spanish on our website, so folks can have access to that, which is awesome. And stay in touch with us. If you're a business owner and you're experiencing an issue and you're not sure where to go with it or whatnot, don't hesitate to reach out. Give us a call at 662-2116, and we'll see if we can be of help to you.
Very good.
And just to follow up on that, too, I'm confident that all 11 members on the advocacy committee would make themselves available if anyone in the community, any of your listeners, Chris, have an interest piqued by this conversation, contact any one of us. And I know I'd be happy to talk with them. And if we haven't covered items that here on this podcast, be happy to spend time with it. I mean, we need help. Listeners, help us.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So the call is out from Joe Holeman, who again is the vice chair of the Advocacy Committee with the Wenatchee Valley Chamber of Commerce. We've got Shiloh Burgess along the way today, too, as well. Again, their executive director here in-house with us for another edition of our continuing series with the Chamber on our community podcasts here, Community Connections podcast here on KOHO 101. Shiloh, Joe, I appreciate the time very much. Thanks, and we'll look forward to chatting with you again, Shiloh, here real soon. And Joe, perhaps again down the road. Again, thanks for everything you do for the Chamber and here in the Valley. It's great to have you as a part of the community.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Shiloh.
Yeah, thank you.
This is the KOHO 101 Community Connection Podcast. Check back often for a continuing look at business in the greater Wenatchee area.